so can I?
Yep, you can start talking. We're currently live, even though it's delayed.
You have the mouse, so I can't switch to the. Oh, okay, there we go. Thank you. Hey, folks. How's everyone doing?
Good, thanks.
Good, perfect. So we are here for Publishing Journey. This is the first panel of the day for Engine Con, so that's pretty exciting. We've got 3 authors joining us. I'm Ellen Curtis. I'm going to be moderating. With me, we have Michelle Churchill, Chelsea B, and Paul Carberry. I'm going to ask each of you guys just to tell us a little bit briefly about yourselves. So I'll start with Michelle.
Hi, I'm Michelle. I'm published with Engine Books with my younger readers novel, The Last Tree, illustrated by Ariel March. And I'm also appear in some of the short fictions, and I also publish some short tabletop RPG supplements through DM's Guild.
All right, and Chelsea, do you want to tell us what you've got on the Engine docket?
Hi, so I have my first novel, London Calling, which was picked up by Engine a couple of years ago, and I also have my newest novel, which came out last year, which is Christmas Mornings.
All right, and what about you, Paul?
Hi, everyone. I just want to say happy birthday, Leah. Sorry. I wrote the Zombies on the Rock series. Book 1, 2, and 3 are out now, and also Carcaradon, which releases this Friday. I have short stories in a few of the From the Rock anthologies. I also have a few drabbles with Black Hair Press in a few anthologies, and 2 comic books coming out with Second Sight Publishing soon.
Excellent. So to give people just tuning in a little bit of background on what we're going to be doing today, we are going to be discussing each of these authors' different publishing journeys. Michelle, Chelsea, and Paul have all come to Engine from various different places in their publishing journey. We've got people here who have submitted to us. We've had people who have published elsewhere and then come to the company, or who have just chosen us for the first time when they're submitting and gotten in. So we kind of picked these 3 authors as kind of like a breadth of what we have in terms of the publishing journey here at Engine. So what we're going to do first is I'm going to ask each of the authors, when did they begin writing? When did they begin publishing? So Chelsea, if you'd like to start.
So I began writing when I was like 13 or 14. So, fairly young, but nothing serious, nothing that actually stuck, or nothing that, I'm glad nothing exists today. And I started writing London Calling in 2015, I think, and did that for NaNoWriMo 1 year, and then spent another year or 2 editing it. And so with that one, I ended up hiring an editor, and I queried a couple of agents. After not having anything stick with that, I paid for an editor and a cover designer and self-published it, and then met Engine at an event and kind of went from there.
So once you kind of got involved, so I believe it was at an Avalon Expo 1 year, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so once we kind of got to talking, how did you find the publishing journey went for you from there?
It went pretty well. It was good to have someone who was already in the industry to have, bounce ideas off of, because at the time, the only people who I knew who were writers were also very new and unpublished like myself. So it was great on the writing front to be, to have those connections and to have those relationships with people. But when it came to actually publishing, I was still just as lost as everybody else. So it was really good to be able to talk about, the different publishing options and why I chose this one versus another one, and just kind of talk about what Engine's plans were in the future as well, because at the time they didn't have anything like my book, which is why I didn't submit to them at first because I thought if they don't publish romance, then they don't want it, which is evidently not the case.
Understandable though. And what about you, Paul? How did you, when did you begin writing and when did you begin publishing?
Began writing in 2000, I think it was 2012, really
Okay.
just as a joke between me and a friend. And then I just kept working at it. I didn't try to publish until 2015 and I self-published, I guess it would be. And so the book came out for the first time in 2016 and I met Engine at AtlantaCon 3, I believe it was. And I switched over to Engine and I've been writing with you guys ever since 2017, I believe.
Excellent. And Michelle, coming back to you, when did you begin writing and when did you begin publishing?
So I sort of took a more serious interest in writing around 2009, and I started joining different writing groups. Didn't really go anywhere with it actively for a while. You know, I got married, ended up having children, kind of put it on the back burner for a while, and then a couple of years ago, I will both thank and probably blame my sister-in-law for dragging me into different things. She's been wonderful with that. She was joining a writing group. She was getting more serious about her writing journey. And she said, you know, I'm joining this writing group. Come with me. And I said, absolutely, let's do this. So we started writing together in this kind of writing group, kind of sharing what we were working on, being more actively interested in progressing and developing more polished pieces. And from there, I just sort of got more involved in submitting to different anthologies, different publishers, just seeing what would stick. And I got a short piece in one of the Engine anthologies, and that was a great confidence boost. And started from there, just continued doing like writing classes and writing communal writing groups, and sort of kind of buckled down and finished the novel I had been working on for a while. And when that novel was finished, I got to talking with Matt, who I met through various the local convention scene, as well as various writing groups. And, you know, I was discussing, you know, my plans for submitting the novel and, you know, kind of developing this plan that a lot of authors do of what are my options to submit, who's accepting work right now? Do I need an agent? Can I submit it freely? What are my options, self-publishing versus traditional publishing versus indie publishing? And Matt sort of said, you're sending to Engine, right? And I was like, I guess so. And he's like, no, you're sending to Engine. And I said, okay, I will. And I did, and it was accepted in, and now it is a book, and it is real and exists in the wild, and it's very exciting. You're muted, Alan.
Michelle and Chelsea, you guys both mentioned about agents. So did either of you ever use an agent to kind of query your manuscripts around to different publishers? I'll ask Chelsea to start first.
No, I didn't, because I only submitted to, I think, 12 or 15. They were kind of like very carefully selected because they had represented things that were close to my novel before, and I'm a control freak and I wanted to be very selective. And so, no, I hadn't.
Right, and Michelle, what about you?
I hadn't as well, but it's certainly something that now that I've sort of gotten a little bit of my feet under me and gotten a little bit more understanding of what to expect and what to work on and what to do, it's certainly something I'm looking forward to as I explore writing different genres and different things. It certainly has a place in publishing. It's a unique sort of service that is offered, especially if you're interested in getting published in a larger market or an international market. So it's certainly something that I'm doing more research on and learning more about. But for the time being, for what I'm doing right now, it's not something that I really need for what my level of interest as a writer is and where I'm at currently in my writing career. It's not something that I need to look at, but it's something that I'm kind of keeping on my periphery as I want to explore other markets and other genres and other types of writing. You know, where are the next steps? Where do we go from here? So it's certainly on my periphery.
Excellent. So for, I guess, people outside of Newfoundland, agents have kind of been like the gateway between, especially the big five publishers and authors. Whereas in Newfoundland, we're kind of really lucky in one way, where authors are kind of able to establish more of a direct link with the publishers that are here, and that's something that I believe all the provinces publishers have in common, which is a little bit different than how you traditionally think of a publisher as working. But it's interesting to hear you guys talk about looking for an agent, because it's something I think some people don't realize, that if you're submitting to the big five, that you probably should look at doing, right?
Yeah, and one thing I find interesting, Ellen, is our local publishing, like you said, our local publishing, I should say, for anyone who is watching and is interested in submitting, all the local publishers here are very accessible. So even beyond Engine Books, regardless of what genre, they all are very upfront on what kind of genres and materials they publish on their websites and in person. And it's very easy to access all the local publishers at events and different things. Now, of course, COVID makes it quite difficult to do that now currently, with a number of markets not happening, but it's there. Everyone I've talked to and met through different writing events is very accessible and very open to talking with new talent and new authors, and even interested in just, you know, going over their submission process, so that it's been very, like, as an author in Newfoundland, it's been very easy to access that information and to feel welcome to submit that information, which I think makes Newfoundland and Labrador very distinct from other provinces in Canada.
Sure. And for our viewers tuning in, the authors that we have here are actually spread out outside the province right now as well. So Michelle is in St. John's at the moment. Chelsea, though, is in England right now. Paul's over in Nova Scotia. So how are you guys finding, I guess, being outside of Newfoundland but still publishing Newfoundland? And Shelley, I guess, how do you find being physically close to a publisher helpful? So Paul, if you want to start.
I guess it hasn't been very different for me, because I was on the West Coast when I was in Newfoundland. So it was still a lot of back and forth through like phone calls, messenger, and all that. So for me, not a lot has changed, but it's always easy to get a hold of someone when you need something. So that's been great. As for like marketing, I guess it's a little harder to publish or market yourself when you're not living in the province, because, you know, people in Nova Scotia, when they think local, they think Nova Scotia. So, but I've found a few avenues to get my work out there. So that's been good.
Awesome. And what about you, Chelsea?
I find it, I mean, for everyone on the Engine team, I'm on really good, friendly terms with everyone. So it's really easy to get in contact. You know, when I'm writing and I'm stuck on a thing and I'm like, you know, what do you think? I can, text you or text Matthew, and it's easy to get that input right away, or set up time for, like a Zoom call or something. But productivity has been more difficult, because I'm so used to meeting up with my writing friends and like going and talking about writing. But the town I currently live in, I moved to during lockdown, so I haven't been able to meet, because it is a very artistic town, and there are a lot of writers here. I just haven't been able to meet them, so that's been kind of unfortunate. But at least when I do come home, a couple times a year, then that writing community will still be there, which will be great.
And Shelley, how about you?
Well, pre-COVID and post-COVID is very different experiences. So I think my post-COVID experience is very similar to Chelsea and Paul's. Even though we're a stone throw away from the publisher and other writers, I might as well be in London, in England, or in Europe, or anywhere, because we're not able to connect physically. And I find that before COVID, it was very easy to meet up in person with anyone from the publishing team, or with an editor, or with other writers to kind of connect. Ariel Marsh, the illustrator, is living in another province, so we did a lot of communication online, which was very smooth, and you know, a lot of text-based communication, which we worked out really well. We hit it off really well. We had the opportunity to meet in person, which was fantastic. That was facilitated, and we were able to kind of connect and meet over coffee and discuss different things that we wanted to do. And so that was spectacular from a writer's perspective. We were able to get a lot of really good work done there. Generally, I find like being able to go to events makes a big difference, which of course, you know, is just makes it's life or death in writing when you can actually physically go to like a library event or a book signing at a local bookstore, and being able to get into those places is great. Unfortunately, just with the timing, my book came out in November of 2019. We were hit with heavy snow. That kind of limited a lot of the things that we were able to do. And then once the snow started to kind of alleviate, we were hit with COVID-19 restrictions for safety. So a lot of things, there had been kind of plans to go into like my son's school and perhaps do some author readings, which I was very excited about. Those have had to be put on hold, probably till next year, or hopefully not too much longer after. But yeah, just a lot of things have changed, and a lot of things have to be kind of approached from a different angle, which I think kind of it's a lot of learning. It's been a lot of learning, not only for myself, but I think for everybody who's writing.
That is a really fair point, actually. I'm involved in some different groups, and one of the things that we're hearing a lot of across the board is that the publishing scene has changed a lot due to COVID, and the author experience has changed a lot. So it's become kind of a learning experience for everyone, regardless of where you are in your publishing journey, whether you're really new to the business or whether you've been here for years. I think everyone's kind of riding that really weird wave together right now, which is kind of building a little bit of community in some way. But I'm interested, how have you guys been managing to kind of cope with that? So I know like a lot of different authors have been doing online readings. We're obviously trying EngineCon here for the first time online. What kind of modifications, I guess, have you guys made to what you kind of came up with in terms of a publishing plan, say 2 years ago versus what the reality is right now? And Paul, I'll go to you first.
Like for a book launch, it's very different now because you can't, well, I guess you can have a physical book launch, but it's very limited. Like with Terra Nova, you guys did a great job with that. But I'm sure if this was 2 years ago, that place would have been packed. It's just a really different scene now. So you got to do a lot of online promotion.
And Paul, you raised a good point there too, because where we are geographically in Newfoundland, we are very lucky that our cases are low, and we are able to have some small events, keeping, you know, social distancing in mind, keeping wearing masks in mind. But it's definitely not like, even if we try physical book launches, it's definitely nothing like what they would have been before. Shelley, how are you kind of coping with that?
Well, certainly exploring, like for me, I write a lot of younger reader stuff, which presents additional challenges in that the younger reader market tends to still be very much physical book based rather than ebooks and other things. Like audiobooks and physical books are kind of the two primary things. Physical books right now they're doing well, but ebooks are certainly like have seen a huge boost. I know I'm reading a lot more ebooks now than I've ever been reading before, and I'm very much a diehard physical solid book fan. But just with easy access through library apps and online stores, I've been buying a lot more and borrowing a lot more ebooks. And so certainly exploring those kind of options more for future writing. I've also been doing some online readings through my Facebook page and my Twitter page, releasing some short works of fiction and flash fiction just as audio, which has been fairly well received by folks, which I think is great and makes me super, super excited. I've also been doing a lot more like virtual readings, a little bit, not as much as I would like to, just because of time and other commitments, but trying to do some more chapter readings virtually, either as video or just as audio. That's been pretty great, and that's certainly something that I'm hoping to explore more, especially with my the novel The Last Tree, possibly doing either an audio version or just doing more virtual readings. And yeah, and just kind of re-looking at what kind of style writing I want to do, doing a lot more short stories and sort of snippets, doing some more tabletop stuff, as that seems to be a lot of what I've been doing, like gathering with people virtually versus in person, and like how can we make that experience better and kind of put my creativity into things that we can still do even though we can't physically gather with friends and family. So that's kind of just been my goal, has been like, well, how can we stay apart but still kind of come together?
And so Chelsea, I know you haven't done as much because you've been hard at work on another monumental task. For our viewers, Chelsea, one of the reasons that she's away right now is because she is hard at work at school and she was writing her thesis. But have you done anything in terms of online things during COVID? Even in terms of like your writing group that you mentioned, are you guys able to meet over Zoom or anything like that?
Yeah, so beginning of COVID, I still was not the best at online marketing because I just forget that it's there and move about my life. But I have definitely been talking with everyone at the Engine team and with my local writing groups pretty much every day, you know, in group chats and stuff. And we have had some Zoom sessions, especially at the beginning of COVID with the time difference. I, you know, could maybe jump on for like an hour or two, but it was still really good to be able to do that. And also being a key worker during all of this, I've been working a lot. So, but I have been able to kind of balance a little bit of that with work as well. So that's been all right. But yeah, and so now that I'm finally free from school for a little while, I am trying to buckle down and get back to writing every day. And it's been very nice.
Excellent. So we kind of mentioned this before. You guys all come from different areas of the publishing spectrum originally. I do want to know, for those of you who kind of went the self-publishing route, so Chelsea, Paul, you were kind of exploring different options in the beginning as well. I was wondering how you guys had maybe had plans revolving around the self-publishing thing, and how that's changed now that you're, I guess, with our more traditional model, even though Engine's not, 100% traditional in that sense. But if you guys want to talk a little bit, what your experiences were like self-publishing and subbing, I'd love to hear that. Chelsea, if you want to go first for that one.
Yeah, so I found that self-publishing my first novel, there was a huge learning curve that was it almost made me just give it up entirely, because I knew that the traditional route wasn't really for me, because it's such a long and lengthy route that it makes it kind of inaccessible, because I have so many things that I want to write and I want people to read them, and I don't want to spend 10 years on one project and getting that accepted by somebody else. So that's why I decided to do that soft publishing route first. And I found it was such a huge task because there's so many things that go into the construction of a novel that you don't really think about until you're doing it. And I knew I was, bad at digital editing, so I wanted to hire a professional. And I'm very glad that I did. And, because I had a very specific idea in mind of what I wanted. So I hand drew it out and sent it to her. And she did a beautiful job on the cover. And but what I found the worst was formatting. I felt like I spent more time formatting than I did on the novel, and it still was not as good as what Engine later did. So yeah, things like all these small little technical things that I'm just not good at. They're not creative, they're not fun, I don't want to do it. Whereas with my second book, it was really easy to just kind of send you guys the file format that you want, and then the experts do it for you, and then they send it back and it looks good. And so that's been really nice. And then as well, like with Engine, as opposed to a big publisher, I could kind of, I had a personal connection. So I could actually say, this is the idea that I have in mind. I want the covers to not match, but flow together. So they look, beautiful together on a shelf. Even if they're not part of a series, I still want them to look cohesive. And, there was some back and forth with, tweaking the cover, but I'm so happy with the way that it came out. And so it made it a lot, it was also a lot less risky, financially. I'm not putting up all the money for these things. So, it's kind of, there is some give and take, but I found that it was a lot more accessible of a route than either of the other options.
And that's a good point, Chelsea, that you mentioned about, putting up money up front, because with even indie publishing, an author submitting to a publisher shouldn't really be expected to put up money for their own book. That's on the publisher then, and the author profits through, royalties or through advances. Paul, I know when you were looking into different routes that you could go, you kind of came across a different mix of those kinds of things. What were some of the experiences that you had like really early on that were maybe, as someone who was early into their publishing career and still learning about the industry, what were some of the things that I guess that you found surprising about the different models out there?
Just when you're going to like a vanity press or whatever you call it, how they try to sell you services. And then with Engine, it's completely different. Like Engine wants to sell your book to make money, but when you go to a vanity press, they try to sell you services to make their money. So like things I didn't know about, like an ISBN, they're free, but when you go to a vanity press, they say they're included. They throw it in for you and they make it seem like they're doing you a favor. Editing, they provide it so much for free, but then they're like, hey, we think you could use this package. Whereas with Engine, they edit everything, they take care of the cover, and like it's really easy to work with someone when you talk back and forth. But with the vanity press, it was just, here's your cover, this is what we think it should look like, yes or no. And they don't really take your opinion, and you don't know the difference, so you just think they know what they're doing, so you go along with it.
That's a good point, though, that like early on you didn't know the difference of it. So when you're talking about services, you're saying like ISBN was one that they were offering, saying that they were going to include it as part of their package. I guess what are some of those like red flags that in retrospect, like now, those are hallmarks of Vanity Press? What would you kind of point out as red flags to other people, I guess?
Well, just anything that they're like adding on, like with the editing, like if you're trying to sell a book, it needs to be edited. So when they're trying to sell you an editing package to make your book better, if they're trying to sell your book, they should, like, it should be included. They shouldn't be trying to make money off of selling you something to make your book better. A real publishing company will make your book better so that it will sell better, and it benefits everybody that way. But just if they're trying to sell you things that should be like the cover of your novel, you shouldn't have to pay for. I was lucky that I didn't have to pay for a lot of those things. I kind of got it, I don't know if it was like compensated, but like I didn't pay for the package, but like I paid for my books, and they said it was 100% royalties when really like their fee was built into the cost of my book.
Yeah, that's a fair point, though. So I guess moving on from that, but kind of off of it, what sort of help do all of you guys wish had been available to you early on? Like what kind of help do you think would have made deciding how to publish easier? I guess in terms of editing, what might have been easier, anything at all? What do you wish you had known? And Shelley, I'll start with you.
I think for me, like when kind of trying to decide like what I needed and what I wanted is just one thing I looked for is publishers or groups on their social media. Do they clearly say what services they offer, and do they clearly say like what the expectations are, and what sort of advertising they offer? So that's one of the things I look for when I'm like exploring sending out a book or querying for publishing. And so like I'm looking for like, do they offer advertising? Do they have a history of strong advertising? Do they do events? Do they do, are they publicly engaged with their local communities? Are they, do they put ads out in print, or do they put advertisements out online somewhere? Do they have a storefront or a digital storefront or some way that's easily accessible to purchase books? Do people have to hunt for my books, or are my books going to be easily available? How much work do I have to put into it? That's a question that I think everyone should kind of ask if they're looking to publish. What is the expectation of the author in promoting their books and in producing their books? Are you as an author expected to have a manuscript that is had a passive editing? Some places expect that there's been one passive editing before it's accepted. Is that something that's expected? Are you expected to attend events? How many events are you expected to attend? Are you expected to do book signings? Are you expected to book your own book signings? Are you expected to promote your own book? Or are you permitted to promote your own book if that's something that you're interested in? Some folks are really interested in doing a lot of their own advertising. Is the publisher that you're going with going to allow you to do that? So those are just some questions to ask. How much input are you going to be allowed to have? I was very lucky in my publishing journey in that myself and the illustrator got to work together really closely with the publisher and kind of develop a plan of what images got to stay in the book, what images got pulled from the book. Not everything that we intended on being in the book got to be in the book. And that's something as an author you have to accept, because that is going to happen. So we got to have a discussion as a group of what stays in, what stays out, what goes on the cover. We kind of, the three of us kind of came together as three different entities and agreed upon what the cover would look like, what the marketing material would look like, what the overall kind of aesthetic of the novel was going to be presented. So I think that's important to know that as an author, yes, you should have a lot of input on your book, but once your book is signed over to a publisher, it's not that you lose anything, but there are more voices that need to take place. And those voices, you don't always need to agree with those voices. And you can certainly have discussions with the others involved, but you're not going to be able, like the book that you send into a publisher is not the book that is going to be printed. And that is something that I think all authors just need to, especially if you're starting out, it's not something that's told to folks when they're like, I'm going to grow up and be an author and I'm going to auth all day. It's not something that people really expect. Editors are not your enemy. I will say that 1,000 times over. Editors are your friends. Love your editors. Be kind to your editors. They love you. They're doing you a favor. Your book will need to be edited multiple times sometimes, and that's okay, and that's great. And just because you get notes back saying to change things does not mean you're a bad writer, and do not get discouraged. I know so many writers who get discouraged because they've submitted either to a contest, or they've submitted to a publisher, or they've gone the route of self-publishing, and then they've gotten back feedback saying, no, this needs to be changed, this needs to be changed, this needs to be fixed. And people really take it to heart and get really upset. And sometimes it is upsetting, it doesn't feel great, but you need to kind of know that a good editor and a good publisher is not saying these things to you to harm you or to hurt you. They're doing it to help you. So I think that's an important thing.
Yeah, encouraging growth in an author as well. So it sounds like you did a lot of research early on into your publishing journey, but there were definitely things that you learned along the way as well, despite all of that research. Chelsea, what kind of help do you wish was available to you early on?
I remember soon, either after I signed with Engine or just before, there was, you guys had a publishing panel. This was years ago. I don't even know if you guys remember this, but you had a publishing panel with all the publishers from the island. And I was like, I wish I had this 2 years ago, because it really clears things up, and it helps to be able to actually have a conversation. Because at the time as well, I was, and I think a lot of people are suffering from confidence issues, and they don't want to just walk up to a publisher at an event and ask questions and say, this is my novel, should I submit it? Or what do you look for in submissions, or what are automatic no's in submissions? Those are kind of good questions to ask. And then have a critical analysis of your own work and say, is this a publisher that I might want to work with? And are these things coming up in my novel, and have I gone over it enough to kind of be to justify that person's time, the person behind the submission screen. Nobody wants a submission to come in on the 1st of December after NaNoWriMo when there's not been reread. And because people get so excited and so proud, and they should be, all of those things. And your next step should absolutely be do nothing for 2 weeks. Watch a movie, enjoy your time with your family, read other books, because I don't know if other people this happens to them, but I forget what books look like when I'm writing. And so then I'll read and I'll be like, oh, okay, you're really supposed to describe like what people are wearing. And so I'll go back and I'll do that because, you get so involved in your own, work, and then you're like, oh, wait, I forgot about this whole other aspect of writing that I should probably do.
So that's interesting. You mentioned the publishing panel. That was the one that was held at MUN, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that for anyone who's wondering, I do believe that there are clips of this available through the Writers Alliance of Newfoundland and Labrador website or Facebook page. And basically all the different publishers in the province, or I think all in the province, had opted into going to this free information session basically for aspiring authors, or just for publishing in the province. And people were able to ask questions of the publishers. And a lot of those questions are things that are frequently asked, but are very individual for each publisher. So that's a good point, though. For people who are early in their publishing journey, keep an eye to your local groups because they are really a wealth of resource. In terms of getting to know the publishers in your community, getting to know other authors in your community, figuring out what the pitfalls of writing and publishing are. All of that is really, really helpful. And so, Paul, what kind of help do you wish that you had early on in your writing career?
Well, obviously an editor, but I wish I knew a group like WANL existed, just because it's a resource of information that you can bounce ideas off of people. And it'd be nice to know, like, if you have a question, you can actually go to someone outside of your publishing, like your publisher, and get like an answer that's more, maybe not always more honest, but you can trust it. Not that I don't trust Engine, but you can't always trust someone, like, especially when you're with the vanity presses. If you ask them a question, they're going to give you the answer that suits them. So like having a group of other authors to bounce ideas off of and ask questions, you get everyone's experience as well. So you get to learn a lot by just talking to a few people, which could help a lot.
Yeah, that's a good point. There are a lot of people who kind of have their ear to what's happening in the industry, and who kind of provide that unbiased perspective on publishing. So I think that that's a very important thing to look at when you're, thinking about which publishers to query, when you're wondering even which editors you'd like to work with, or where next to go in the writing process. I think it's a really important thing to reach outside yourself, because I think oftentimes people get the idea of writers of being like home behind their keyboard typing away and not really working with anyone else. But like Chelsea, you've mentioned, like when you were self-publishing, you had to figure out editing, you had to figure out covers, Michelle, you mentioned when you were working on your book, you were working directly with an artist. Paul, I know in terms of the comics that you've worked on, you're also collaborating with different people there, with artists and with a writing team then. So I think a big takeaway for people should be that the publishing journey isn't a lonely one. It's actually full of different professionals, different voices, and really everyone is bringing something very important to the table. So we are getting kind of close to the time that we're cleaning up. What I am going to ask you guys now is to go a little bit into what you've been working on lately. So we did mention this a little bit in the beginning, but if I can get each one of you to kind of go over your most recent novel that's come out, any other projects, so outside of Engine even, we'd love to share what you guys have been doing, and then what the next kind of thing on the horizon is for each of you. And Michelle, I'll start with you.
Okay, so the latest novel I have out here, I have The Last Tree is my latest novel, out from Engine Books. What else am I working on? That came out in November, December, and it is available all kinds of awesome places. What else? I am working on a sequel to that book. This is my NaNoWriMo project for this year. Hopefully it will get done in one shot, but we will see. So that'll probably be a couple years out before it goes from writing to actual print, because that's how books work. That's my novel stuff I'm working on. I've also been doing a whole lot of 5th edition tabletop RPG stuff over on DM's Guild. My latest there is Waterdeep Kitten Rescue, which I am super duper excited about. It's sitting as an Electrum bestseller right now, which I am very surprised about. Who knew how many people liked kittens? I love kittens. It's very exciting. So that's over on the Dungeon Masters Guild. And I've got a couple other collaborative pieces that I'm working on over there that I can't talk about yet, but they're coming out very soon. So I'm super duper excited about that. And that's everything I've been working on for the last little while.
Excellent. And so anyone who's looking to check out all of these things, you do have an author page on Facebook, correct?
I do. I have an author page on Facebook, and I have an author Twitter account where I have links to all of the goodies. My book information can be found on the Engine Book website, and I will put up in the chat all of my links while Chelsea and Paul are doing their intros.
Excellent. All right. So Chelsea, did you want to go over what you've been working on now and give us a little bit of background on what's coming soon?
Yeah, so I had Christmas Mornings came out September last year, November, something like that. And it's somewhere in that general time frame.
Fall 2019.
Before December of last year.
Before times.
Yeah. And so I have been trying to remember to market that before this holiday season. That would be fantastic. I keep trying to remind myself of that. And I'm also about halfway through another standalone contemporary romance. And this one is my favorite so far, like by far. So I'm very excited to get that one done and to send it over. And I've also been trying to do some outlining of some other pieces in different genres. I'm trying to play around with some things for, I won't say what exactly yet, but some younger readers and some just different genres for adults. But we'll see when those happen, probably next year or the year after.
Excellent. And you also had a big project too that we mentioned a little bit earlier that was more academic in nature, but was a huge accomplishment. So
yeah.
We want to, obviously everyone on the Engine team wants to congratulate you on the completion of your thesis.
Thank you. I just finished my master's and I'm very excited to have it done. And I got the printed copies, which are not for sale. Nobody wants to buy them. I got 4 for like my parents and my nan, but that's it. But yeah, we're glad to have that over with. That's for sure.
Excellent. All right. And Paul, you mentioned a little bit in the beginning about what you're working on, but do you want to go over your most recent publications and what's coming up soon?
So Carcaradon releases this Friday. I worked on that actually 2 years ago. So it's about sharks in Newfoundland, and it's me writing it. So I'm pretty sure you have a good idea what that's going to be about. I've already written Zombies on the Rock book 4. I'm just sitting on it for now. And outside of Engine, I'm working with Peter Bro on a comic book strip called Sam Hines Gate that will be featured in Mississippi Zombie issue 3. And I've also been working on a comic book strip of my own with help from Peter Bro. It's bringing the Zombies on the Rock universe outside of Newfoundland. It's going to Mississippi because it's going to be in Mississippi Zombies as well. So that's been exciting. Learning a lot from there because writing a comic is extremely different than writing a novel. So it's been a great experience.
Excellent. So you'd also mentioned too that you had some dravels published, I believe, as well. And also there was Terra
Nova. Yeah, so
you've been very busy.
Very busy. I took advantage of my time off during the pandemic. If only we had zombies. But yeah, so I have 5 dravels in Oceans Anthology and 4 in the Ancients Anthology. So they're from Black Hair Press. They're both out now, and they actually have hardcover books. So I haven't received mine yet, but I'm very excited to get them. They're on the way. So
very cool.
If I had thought, I would have brought Carcaradon downstairs, but I'm not going up there right now.
All good. And so you mentioned Carcaradon releases on Friday. It's already available on Amazon for order. You've already got your copies. I've seen pictures. They look fabulous and super cool.
And you did the cover, so thank you.
Well, less I'm talking about the cover, how the cover looks, more it's a nice, thick-looking, cool book about, you know, sharks and scary stuff, and just a really good romp all around, I imagine.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in that novel. It's a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. And so I think for anyone who are fans of that genre, they're going to have a really good time reading about it. So again, I'm going to just get each of you to plug your author pages, because I believe all of you have somewhere where you're available online, correct? So Michelle, do you want to start up at the top?
Yeah, so I just put mine in the comment section, so you can find me on Twitter at mchurchillauth1 because I joined Twitter very late in life. You can also find me on Facebook at mchurchillauthor, and I put up a link to my latest DMs Guild product as well, and I'm on the Engine book page under Michelle Churchill.
Excellent. Chelsea, what about you?
So I have my Facebook page, which is author Chelsea B, and I don't really use my Twitter. So the other place would be Instagram, which is Chelsea B Books. And so, you know, that's mostly personal, but if you want to get in contact with me, that's the easiest place to do it. So I'm always on Instagram.
Same. Sorry. And Paul, how about you?
I have a Facebook author page. It's Paul Carberry, and I do have a Twitter, but I don't use a lot of social media, so I'm still learning. And I have Instagram, and I'm very new at that, so I'll get there.
Yes, and we do try and share out as much as we can on our Engine Books page what our authors are up to. I do encourage everyone to give our authors individually a follow, though, because sometimes they'll be posting little background tidbits of the writing process, or they'll have the fun things that they're doing up. Definitely, if you enjoy Dungeons and Dragons and Kittens, or either or, definitely check out Michelle's author page for the link to her DM skill book, because that's a whole barrel of fun. Again, if you like sharks and zombies, or, you know, anything scary, really, check out Paul's author page. And if you've got a little soft spot in your heart for something lovely, just check out Chelsea's page, because she's got some really lovely romances and contemporary writing on the go. we are getting close to time now, so I will get you guys to each just tell us one little last thing. If there's anything about the publishing journey that we haven't touched on today, if you guys want to just chime in quickly and give our viewers a little bit more background into what you've done or what you wish they knew. We'll start with Chelsea for this one.
Yeah, so I think kind of closing thoughts would be edit more than you think you do, and then be more confident than you than you are. I think that's kind of the best way to get what you want while, you know, covering your back and make sure that you're representing yourself the way that you deserve it. So yeah, I think that's it.
All right, and Paul, how about you?
I would say if something doesn't seem right, don't be afraid to ask questions. And publishing is not like a sprint; it's a long journey. So be prepared to like take your time.
And Michelle?
Very much the same. Take your time, do your research, kind of sit down and write down what your goals are, and know that your goals can change at various points. Know that you're going to be your book's biggest advocate, so be ready to speak to it and be ready to promote it, but also be ready to accept that it's going to change. Network with other creators, even if they're not other writers. You know, join Facebook groups, join Discords if that's a social media that you enjoy. Collaborate as much as you can. Don't be afraid to ask questions or even just listen. Listen to podcasts, read more than you write. Do everything that you can to kind of know what's out there, know your genre, know what publishing options you have, and just be true to yourself and do what your gut tells you to do with your book, whether it's go a self-published route or go a traditional published or go an indie published route.
All right, so thank you guys so much for joining us. Again, if anybody here is interested in Michelle, Chelsea, or Paul's work, please do check out www.enginebooks.com. That's ENGENBOOKS, enginebooks.com. We have links to all of their work on there, published through us. If you check out our Facebook page, again, Engine Books, we have all kinds of stuff getting shared out all the time on the things our authors do. And again, check out their own author pages, because their author pages will have all the latest and greatest. And if we, for some reason, miss something, it'll be on there. So I want to thank everyone again for tuning in to our first panel for EngineCon. EngineCon 2020 has, you know, been a fun ride so far, and we'll be having readings throughout the day. I believe, Chelsea, you have a reading coming up. Does anyone else here have a reading? Michelle, do you? Paul?
I do, yes.
Paul has a reading, perfect. So readings from 2 of the 3 authors here, and Michelle has readings up on her author page as well if you want to check those out at other times. There's going to be all kinds of other things coming up throughout the day. We have talks from our editors. We have talks about Terra Nova. Definitely stay tuned. We will have all of these archived as well, because obviously today is a holiday and we know that some people will be busy with family. So if you miss something and you want to tune in later, come back and we will still be here chatting away about all things book related. Again, thank you for joining us. This is Michelle Churchill, Chelsea B, Paul Carberry, and I'm Ellen Curtis. You're here for EngineCon 2020, and we are signing off. Goodbye.
Goodbye.